Welcome back to the Price of Business. I am your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business as we wrap up another fantabulous show. And Sigmund Kramer and I always having fun. It's been a good show, and I love. People tell me the number one thing they like about our program. Bill Nappick, who is, a host another program on here, he did a great job guest hosting while I was up in Minnesota a couple of months ago. They loved the fact that it's like a variety show for business.
Oh, yeah.
Every segment.
All over the place.
Yeah, we're all over the place.
ADHD, baby.
It's called ADHD radio, and I thought that would scare people.
ADHD radio, I love it.
Yeah, I'm afraid it would chase people off. But really, every segment is generally different from the segment before.
It would probably sell better than HD radio.
HD radio, that's exactly right. So I love it. I love today's show, and it was a lot of fun, and always enjoy being able to visit with the listener as well as to the great people who come in that we get to chat with. So it was a great show. Interesting topic, kind of dominating the news is like all of a sudden everyone's become Captain Obvious to the reality that what if ISIS were to use the thousands and thousands of people migrating?
Millions.
Millions. I'm sure it's hundreds of thousands. I'm not sure if it's millions yet, but it could be in the millions. 2 million. Okay, that they could possibly put terrorists in those millions that would migrate with them that could easily get lost in there and do things, like what happened in Paris, which now we think at least 2 of those guys were actually migrants that came up through the mass exodus. Right. I wrote about this, folks, in May of this year. I wrote about this in Huffington Post, that's exactly what was going to happen. I wrote an article called the ISIS strategy to take over Rome unfolds.
Yeah.
I wrote that then. Rome is obviously one of their targets. They assumed Paris was a softer target. And frankly, France has been more proactive than Italy has, which is one of the reasons why, in dealing with ISIS.
But they have a larger percentage of the population in France that is Muslim.
That also helps.
And so, let's face it.
It helps and hurts.
When you have that many people, fully 10%, that are Islamic, right? Well, it's easier to blend in. Their whole areas, their whole neighborhoods, their whole sections of Paris and other parts of France that are made up of Algerians, and they're Muslim, by the way.
Oh yeah, and they want to kill these Muslims because they are lukewarm. They're not spiritually active. They're not involved, in the movement. And they hate them apparently as much or more than Jews.
Well, they want to spread Sharia law. They want to spread their own form of Islam, and they're not tolerant of other Muslims who are not as, like you said, hot under the collar for Allah. If they're lukewarm, they're considered the enemy. They're considered infidels. So what you have is you've got a bunch of people, and I have to tell you, I'm so inundated today and yesterday with posts about how people who are trying to say that the Syrian refugees shouldn't come to America, that we shouldn't let them in, or at least put a pause on it, that we're religious bigots, that we're hateful, that we are racist. And even our own president came out and said that the people who are trying to oppose the Syrian refugees are doing so out of religious bigotry. Okay, I just want to point something out real quick, Kevin. There have been Christians, Assyrian Christians, that have been targeted for genocide for years.
Yep.
And our own State Department has refused to give them genocide asylum.
Mm-hmm.
And we're refusing to let them in. I think maybe we've let 50 a year in. We're talking about letting tens or hundreds of thousands of Syrian refugees and Muslims in. But when it comes to Christians, they cannot be allowed in by our State Department, by our president. Where's the religious bigotry? Where's the hate? Where's the hate? So there's a lot of manipulation going on. It would seem
like from a sociological triage perspective, we would get the Christians out first anyway, right? Because, the Muslims are being generally persecuted, but the Christians are being beheaded. The Christians are being killed in mass.
So are the Muslims,
raped and murdered.
So are the Muslims. I mean, they're equal opportunity offenders.
That's true.
And the point is, though, none of the other countries in the region are accepting these Syrian refugees. They're all citing security risks.
Right. Whereas they'll take the Muslims, but they won't take the Christians.
No. They're not taking the Muslims. They're not taking the Syrian refugees.
Where?
In the Arab countries. They're refusing, and they're citing security risks.
Mm-hmm.
The same things that some people in America are citing.
Are beginning to wake up to.
And when you have obvious evidence that, and it's logic. It's just plain logic, common sense. The bad guys want to blend in with people who are going to be admitted into the country as quickly as possible so that then they can disperse and they can do whatever they want to do. And they've done it in Europe. They're going to do it here. Now, you specifically wanted to talk about something relating to this subject. What was it?
About the fact that I'm not sure. I mean, that I said that since May, I wrote back in May that, for example, I don't think most Americans realize this, but the boats that these people were migrating from were boats that were owned by ISIS.
What?
They were literally owned by ISIS. The boats, the Coyotes are ISIS.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. I mean, that alone should have been a red flag, that something was amiss.
I've never heard that.
Yep.
That doesn't surprise me that they would keep that out of the news.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing I keep seeing is how they're trying to tie this back to World War II and compare the Syrian refugees to the Jews who were turned away by Europe, turned away by America, and then many of them ended up going back to Germany and ended up in concentration camps and being murdered, being starved to death, being baked in ovens, being tortured. They're trying to legitimize bringing the Syrian refugees in because we didn't bring the Jews in. And I keep having to remind people that the Jews that were turned away were never thought to be a threat, a security threat, that there was no worldwide phenomenon of Jews blowing cities up, maiming and killing people in the name of their religion.
Nope.
And there was no phenomenon of the Jews wanting to bring their Mosaic law to America and undermine the Constitution and replace it with Mosaic Hebraic law.
Right.
Those are the obvious differences. I'm not saying that all the Syrian refugees are Islamic terrorists, okay? I want these people to be able to escape from the villainy of ISIS as well. But we have got to maintain some semblance of common sense here when it comes to vetting to make sure that we don't have a bunch of terrorists coming in with the refugees. And right now, there are no assurances that that is going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Nope, there's none whatsoever. It's gonna, we honestly, we've got to figure out how we can, be a part, be helpful without being stupid.
And here, just so you know, last thing, Turkey. Okay, talking about Turkey earlier, they just detained 8 men. This is just coming over. They just detained 8 men in an airport. And guess what? At Ataturk Airport in Turkey, these men are believed to be members of ISIS. Okay, the ones that we've been talking about, the ones that blew up France. Turkish police detained 8 suspected members of ISIS, and they were planning to sneak into Europe posing as refugees. They found a handwritten note on one of the suspects detailing a migration route from Istanbul to Germany via Greece, Serbia, and Hungary, including smuggler boats across the Mediterranean Sea as well as several train and bus journeys. They found a Syrian passport, which was faked, and the Greek government confirmed that the jihadist in Paris, one of them, came through the Greek island of Lagos with a fake passport, and he was also believed to have gone through Serbia. So what are we going to do here? Are we going to just follow what the president says and basically shame Americans into accepting these refugees without question? Or are we going to be prudent, a word that we don't hear anymore? We're going to be prudent and say, look, we need to make sure that the people that are coming in...
George H.W. Bush ruined that word. It wouldn't be prudent.
I know, and the sad fact is we don't hear it anymore, but we need to be prudent. We need to be vigilant. We need to be safe and secure. And there are a million reasons why I find it just baffling and upsetting that the media is choosing these Syrian refugees, and our politicians are also choosing these Syrian refugees to focus on. Whereas look at in Nigeria, they just had an attack yesterday. They blew up, 30 or some people. And
there was one last week, too,
Boko
in Nigeria.
Haram, and in Lebanon.
There was over 100 in Nigeria last week
There
as well.
are so many attacks happening across the world.
The only ones we really care about are the Western ones.
But more than that, Kevin, the only refugees that they care about. Have you heard anything about Nigerian refugees? Have you heard anything about people wanting to escape and we need to bring these people here? Even after Boko Haram, kidnapped hundreds of young girls. Hundreds. But we're not talking about bringing refugees from Nigeria.
Right.
There's a sickness here, and it's called political correctness. And we need to be very, very careful because we are letting it win.
We are letting it win. All right, we're going to wrap up on that very depressing point. Thank you so much. People check out Kevin Price and put in ISIS, and you'll see the article on Huffington Post. I predicted this in May. I hate to say I told you so, but Captain Obvious could have done that as well. All right, when we come back tomorrow, we're going to have much more for you. Stay tuned for the rest of the great broadcasting day right here on this station.